All right, let's wrap up some predictions. And what I like about predictions is that there's always we live in a bold prediction era, and I always like making fun of bold prediction culture. I actually revisited an article I wrote for the season where you look at the different type of bold predictions that are out there. It's because you can't just make a prediction for the playoffs or a prediction for the season. You have to do a bold prediction. One of the type of predictions I like doing is a bold prediction parlay, which is, for example, if I tell you the Avalanche are going to win the Stanley Cup, that's not a bold prediction. But if I tell you the Avalanche win the Stanley Cup and Nazem Kadri leads them in goals, now that's a bold prediction there. So it's that parlay. But if you add more legs to your parlay, then you're really making it a bold prediction where it's Nazem Kadri leads them in goals. Scott Wedgwood has 3 shutouts in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Then all of a sudden you're really getting bold with your prediction there. So I've gone on enough here, but I'll turn it over to you, which is a parlay bold prediction that you might have. Let's hear it.
Well, I think you're going to see. I'll just say my parlay would probably be. This is probably going to be a year of a lot of upsets. I don't think it's going to go, at least the East. I don't think it's going to go very much to form. I think you're going to probably see a lower seed in at least the Eastern Conference bracket. Western, you know, you might see Dallas finally break through and get to the final. I think obviously they've had their issues, although with Vegas, that's going to be a tough thing. But I'd say we're going to see one of the Western teams is going to win the Stanley Cup. It's going to be one of the usual suspects, and they're going to beat an East team probably out of the blue in 6 games. That's
Uh,
my prediction.
it's funny because like I'm thinking of prediction parlays, and we based on our discussion, I actually would start with a big idea and then build into the bold prediction, which is that my bold prediction will be that this year's playoffs will not be defined by physicality or by the way the Florida Panthers played. Instead, it will be defined by speed and skill and offense and scoring and all that stuff that we that fans are probably like the fans like. And I mean, maybe not the hockey purists, but fun to watch and it's going to make for fun TV and fun viewership. With that in mind, I see the Montreal Canadiens just outscoring a lot of teams on their way to the playoffs. They average 3.4 goals per game. The Lightning also are like 3.5. So you have these teams that can really run up the score on teams. But the Montreal Canadiens are the team that does it. And then the added extra layer is whether this is bold or not, but we're just grouping it together with the other things that are contingencies, is let's go with Cole Caulfield scores 20 plus goals in the playoffs, and because of that is the Conn Smythe winner, which would also be fun. It would be really fun if somehow he found a way to beat the Wild, and then every time and then after winning the Conn Smythe, he just points to Bill Guerin and he goes like, "Ah, I should have been on the team" or something like that. Although if we're going with the Olympic full picture Olympic moments, Jason Robertson might have a great series because of that. But that's my bold prediction parlay. The other one I had actually was the Avalanche, which is I mentioned it earlier, which is Avalanche win the cup. Nathan McKinnon wins the Conn Smythe, but that's not those aren't bold. But then adding on the Nazem Kadri leads in goals and Scott Wedgwood has those shots. But just I mentioned the Canadians prediction there. But your thoughts on all that?
I think, obviously, I think Montreal's got a very, very good shot. I think, like I said before, I think my dark horse is probably Ottawa. I think Ottawa can do a lot of damage, particularly if they end up in the Metro bracket, because I think, like I said, they're not quite the Florida Panthers, but they play that style. Obviously the Kachucks are both irritants to their own degree. I think, obviously they've had some injuries, but they're kind of getting healthier at the right time. They've been playing good hockey down the stretch. And I think if they end up in the Metro bracket, they have a pretty easier time. Obviously Tampa Bay's been hot and cold this year, but we'll see how they show up in the playoffs. So, their great nemesis are not there this year, so which probably helps them a lot. And then, out west, like I said, it's probably going to depend on, obviously Colorado's very skilled, but probably depends on their goaltending. And, Dallas, it depends on how much is left in the tank when they get to the Eastern Finals. It's been the Western Finals, excuse me. That's kind of been their thing for the last couple of years. So It's going to be interesting. It's always fun, but I think you're going to have an unpredictable playoff. I think it's going to be a lot of upsets. I think you'll see a couple of the top teams get knocked out. And of course, we always have the argument about the NHL's playoff system to begin with, about how, you eliminate some very good teams early, which kind of, defeats the purpose of crowning the best team, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think this year of all years might make the case for that 1 versus 8 format where Utah has a better record than any team in the Pacific Division, and they're going to have to play a bunch of road games. We talk a lot about Utah, maybe, but it's weird because Utah's not like a Cinderella team or a dark horse team, which it's going to make for an interesting conversation because if you were to do 1v8, it probably you'd have like the eighth seed would be the Ducks, or for example, or one of those teams. Meanwhile, it's interesting because that might it's gonna this season particularly draw out the frustration of that, and maybe the frustration of the overtime point. If you lose in overtime, or you get a free point because the LA Kings might get in based on that, or something like that. But anyway, I digress. This is good because we got the juices flowing. That's all we got. Ted, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and bearing with the technical difficulties we've had, which are now coming up again for me. But I digress. Ted, thanks for joining. Any plugs? Anything you're working on? I know it's as someone who covers the Capitals, I'm sure it's a busy time or an interesting time considering this era that we're in or what's going on next. So, what do you have in the works for us?
Well, basically, obviously we'll see what the Caps do. If they make the playoffs, it'd be interesting because you get one more Sid and Ovi matchup, but I think that the odds are stacked against them to get in this year. And then so I'll probably do a postmortem on them whenever they get officially eliminated. And then I got to figure out the playoffs because obviously the other team I cover regularly, the Islanders, were eliminated last night. So I'll be interested to see. I can the good news is I'm a columnist, so I can kind of pick and choose what's going on, and I'll just look at whatever the matchups are and kind of go from there.
I have the same sort of thing, but to a lesser degree because my version of what you're talking about is the AHL level. So I have to as soon as this weekend is over, plan my next few weeks out, which might involve a few drives to Rhode Island or something crazy. So we'll
Yep,
see. We'll see how things go there. I still have that up in the air, but really appreciate you hopping on. But for now, that's all
absolutely.
we got. We hope you enjoyed, and really appreciate all of you for bearing through. For really following all season long. We're playoffs are around the corner. By the time the next episode is out, it will be playoffs will already be underway. So really appreciate everyone for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe to Mike Fink Hockey Writer on YouTube, which you can do. Really would help a lot. And check out all the great content in Hockey Hot Stove. You can check out Ted's work there. You can check out my work. You can check out my AHL coverage at the Hockey News. So fun stuff there as well. But we hope you enjoyed and tune in next time for another great episode. Thank you.